On this episode of Speaking of College of Charleston, guest host Tom Cuniff, editor of the College of Charleston magazine, talks to James London, owner and chef of Chubby and the recently opened cocktail bar Seahorse. A Charleston native, James London grew up fishing off his family's dock on Edisto Island. He enrolled at the College of Charleston to pursue his passion in food and worked full-time in fine dining restaurants while earning a double major in business administration and hospitality and tourism management. London graduated and moved to New York City and San Francisco, learning from some of the greats. He eventually made it back to Charleston, where he and his wife opened Chubby Fish, a dock-to-table seafood concept that has taken the city by storm. Chubby Fish has garnered a Best New Restaurant nod from Bon Appetit, was ranked number 7 restaurant in the U.S. from Food and Wine magazine, and a James Beard finalist for Best Chef Southeast in 2024. We went on the road for this episode and recorded in the private dining room at Seahorse, the gorgeously decorated cocktail bar on Cumming Street, which is adjacent to Chubby Fish. You may hear some background noises coming from the kitchen, but unfortunately, you won't be able to smell the delicious flavors being prepped in the kitchen. You'll have to come and smell them for yourselves.
Thanks for joining us on the CofC podcast, Speaking of College of Charleston. We're sitting here in your new venue here at Chubby Fish called Seahorse. And tell me a little bit about what prompted you to add this on to your restaurant.
Yes, so first off, thanks for having me, and thanks for a beautiful article in CofC magazine. It came out really, really well, and I really appreciate
Glad you liked it.
You including us in that. So Seahorse was prompted during COVID, and so COVID, as you know, Chubby Fish is 1,000 square feet. Chubby Fish is very small, and during COVID, I didn't feel comfortable having any of my people in there, in a very tight space with a ton of people coming in and out. And I didn't want anything to make them feel like they didn't want to be at work. And so for me, the easy answer was just keep Chubby Fish closed. But then as time went on, I started thinking, man, if we had an outdoor space, we would be able to reopen in some capacity. And so this building next door to Chubby Fish came open during COVID. And so I knew that if we were able to get this rezoned to a commercial business zoning, then we might be able to use the outdoor space and have people eat outside. And so that was really the impetus to kind of go head first in this direction. So we opened up in January of this year, and it's been great. So cocktail bar downstairs, 2 private dining rooms upstairs, and then we have a kitchen here that services both areas.
And you can keep some of your business, because I know you have a long line, 190 people a night online, or how many?
Yeah, so we do between 165 to 185 every night. And so with no reservations, what that means is that we have a giant line that stretches down the street. And so oftentimes these people will put their names down, we'll give them a time to come back, but then we're generally telling them, go to this bar, go to this bar, go to this bar, and hang out, and then you come back at your time. But
Now they can hang out here.
Now they can hang out here. Now they can spend their money with us, and we didn't have to pull out all the stops and try to create a world-class cocktail bar. But that's what we wanted to do. Yeah. And so that now there's a really great cocktail bar downstairs at Seahorse, and then upstairs here, these are our 2 private dining rooms. So anytime that you have large parties coming into town, this is the perfect spot to bring them.
What sort of cocktails are you serving?
So it's across the board, and what we strive to do really was create this worldwide coastal theme, so that you wouldn't feel out of place with any of these drinks in any major port city in the world. And so we focus on, rums, on whiskeys that have some ties to coastal cities. And, there's a good bit of Japanese theme in there. So it really, it's across the board. But the big thing is with the cocktails, they're so dialed in, they're so balanced, and they're really, really beautiful.
And you offer small bites as well?
We do. So we have a daily changing menu, and we generally have 6 menu items per day. We tend towards the snacky side of things. So today we're doing this little pork belly porchetta toast. We do an anchovy toast with great Cantabrian anchovies. We're doing some razor clams, some live bay scallops. We're doing potato chips done cacio e pepe style with Iberico ham. So kind of fun things that keep you coming back, keep you drinking, and keep you entertained.
Well, congratulations on your second James Beard nomination.
Second Beard nomination, yes. But this one's a tougher category.
Outstanding chef of the Southeast or the whole country?
So last year was Best Chef Southeast, and we were finalists for that. We got to go up to Chicago for that, and we got to bring the entire team, which was really awesome. But this year we are nominated for Outstanding Restaurant in the Country. And so that is a tougher category. There's more nominees, and it's nationwide. And a lot of these guys are big players in the industry, and they've been doing it for, they've had the restaurants for 10, 15 years. And so scrappy little Chubby Fish out of Charleston, South Carolina is coming in there, and
it'd be like a Cinderella team in the March Madness.
Totally. Yeah, we're the small guy, and but the great thing about this nomination is that it recognizes the entire team, and it really takes an entire team, an entire army of like-minded individuals in order to pull off something like we pulled off. And so I couldn't be happier that the entire team was nominated, and it really is a testament to how hard they work and how much they buy into what we do.
What's on the menu for tonight in Chubby Fish?
So menu tonight we have some amazing black grouper that just came in, and that's going to be served with a green garlic butter, some first of the season English peas, trout roe, and some beef glazed shiitake mushrooms. So really excited about that one. We have a pork shoulder steak, which is typically an off-cut, but probably the most flavorful cut you can get off of a pig. And so those are pigs that are coming from Kingstree, South Carolina, and they're all old heirloom breed pigs from the original Sea Island pigs that came from the Spanish. So we're serving that tonight with a salsa verde that's done with spring onions and green almonds.
I'm getting hungry.
Yeah, we just got a tuna delivery, so we have a bunch of North Carolina tuna that came in, and so we'll be doing that with crudo. We'll be doing that on a tuna belly toast. We'll be doing that pounded and seared and done with a sauce that's made out of the tails of the tuna that we cure and smoke and then make that into a kind of an aioli situation, kind of like a tonnato. So yeah, there's probably 38 different menu items today. Probably 6 to 7 of those are new ones today. So every day it's fun, it's interesting. We don't necessarily know what we're walking into every day, but we go in there and we play jazz and we improv and we have a really good time.
I know. Tell me a little bit about your dock to table philosophy and the relationships you have with all these fishermen and farmers. I mean, that's a big key to your success, don't you think?
It's huge. In restaurants, relationships are everything. If you don't have great relationships with your purveyors, you're not going to get great product. There's an old saying in restaurants that the number of wheels on the delivery vehicle that dropped off your product at your door is inversely related to the quality of the food in the restaurant. Meaning, if you're getting everything off of a Cisco truck, you're not going to have amazing product, and inherently you're not going to have amazing food that hits the table. So for us, we go as small as possible with our purveyors. So, as much as possible, I don't want to go through a middleman. I don't want to have to pick up the phone and call a seafood purveyor and say, hey, could I get 40 pounds of red snapper and 20 pounds of flounder and 60 pounds of grouper for tomorrow? I want the fishermen to come to me with the cooler of everything they caught, and then I want to buy the entire cooler and use that on our menu.
Kind of reverse engineer it, huh?
Totally. That way, I don't want anything that's coming out of the water that, was harmed in the process of catching it to have to go back over the side because they don't think that there's a good market for it, because they don't think that it's as good as the grouper or the flounder or the red snapper. I want to be able to use all that. And the thing with seafood is it's all incredible. It's all delicious as long as you figure out how to prepare it.
Is there a name for the type of cuisine you provide here?
I have no idea what you call my cuisine. It's
just not seafood. It's more than just like a seafood.
Yeah, it's a hodgepodge of so many different techniques and flavors and ingredients, and really it's kind of a map of my career in a way, in terms of how we're layering our flavors, how there's different. And the thing is, when I was coming up, I was hired as an executive chef. I got my first chef position when I was 26 in New York, and it was at a fine dining Japanese spot. And before that, I had worked at a fine dining Spanish spot. And then prior to that, I was down in Charleston, and I was working at a Mediterranean restaurant. I worked at some old school Southern restaurants, and then before that, I was working in barbecue restaurants. And so, from the Japanese spot in New York, I did an African spot up in Montauk. I did a Cajun restaurant. I did an Italian restaurant. So I've done all these different cuisines, and the thing for me is when I was in each of those spaces, I hated being pigeonholed into doing one specific type of cuisine, because my brain would my gears would stop turning, because I could only think of something in an Italian light or in a Japanese light. And so all these ideas would come up and I'd have to push them to the side. And so I didn't really experience true creativity until I opened up Chubby Fish. And writing that first menu the first day, it was all of a sudden all these ideas were coming from left field, from right field. All these different cuisines were merging together, and it was kind of this real matrix moment where all of a sudden it all made sense. And back when I was a line cook, I had a chef I worked for, and he gave me a piece of advice, and it was, you're going to work in 10, 15, 20 different restaurants. Each of those restaurants that you work in, you're going to take a tool from it, and you're going to put that in your toolbox. And then when you build your restaurant one day, you're going to open that toolbox, and that's your restaurant. And, I heard it, and I kept thinking about it while I was, getting bogged down in all these different restaurants. And then when it actually happened, when I opened those doors that first day, that was my food. That was my style. That was Chubby Fish. So it was a real full circle moment for me.
Your culinary toolbox, as it were. Huh?
Absolutely.
Where's the name Chubby Fish come from?
So Chubby Fish, basically I had written my business plan. I needed to start going to banks and pitching my business plan so that they would give me money. None of them ever gave me any money. But I needed, I had the business plan. I had run all my numbers. The concept looked solid. I had the space already, but I had no name. And so my wife and I sat down and we drank a bottle of wine and just threw out names. And
what were some other names you threw out?
Well, I don't want to give you all the names because I may want to name another restaurant one of these names.
Okay.
And I don't want somebody else to take it.
How about a name? How about a name you rejected that you?
Well,
wouldn't-
I rejected Chubby Fish so many times.
Oh, really?
Yeah, but she kept saying it, and I was tired, and I was ready to go to bed, and I had an early meeting in the morning, and
This you're talking about Yo-Yo, your wife and
yeah,
partner.
I'm talking about Yo-Yo, my wife, and she kept saying Chubby Fish. It's cute, it's fun. We don't want to be something serious, and I kept saying no, 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 and finally it was time to go to bed, and I said, sure, we can call it Chubby Fish. So we went and put it on the front of the business plan, and that was it.
It works. I like the name.
And looking back, like I would have named it something else, but I'm really happy that we landed on Chubby Fish.
Why are you happy?
Because the number of people, I mean, every night there's somebody who says, I really love the name. How'd you come up with that? And, if I was coming up with one of my other names, then it may not have wound up like that.
Yeah, I think it's a good name. I know you only you seat 38 in the main restaurant, and you do 4 turns a night. Is that right?
Correct.
How long did it take you to? That's incredible in this industry to do 4 turns a night. I know. How long did it take you to get there? Were you successful right away? You opened in 2018. Is that right?
Yes, we opened up in July of 2018. Off the rip, there was this pent-up demand for Chubby Fish. And it was just the fact that we were doing a dock-to-table seafood concept in a city where seafood is so important, and people travel to Charleston strictly to come eat seafood. And what we were doing was not overly groundbreaking and conceptually. On the West Coast, this is a concept that you see in a lot of little port towns, where it's basically there's a little seafood market, and then they have a chalkboard menu, and it's kind of their whatever came in that day, and they serve it simply. And I knew that we didn't have that in Charleston. Sure, there are seafood restaurants, but there was nobody who was really saying, I'm going all in on local seafood, and I will die on that sword, essentially.
Yeah, the other restaurants are kind of cooking what people want, getting the orders from Cisco or whatever, and just cooking up what people expect. Now,
yeah, and there's certainly there's many great chefs who came before me in Charleston who really started that and started pushing that.
the key to your restaurant clearly is the improvisation, like you talked about, the jazz-like ability you have. That really, in other seafood restaurants, they're kind of relying on just tried and true dishes, aren't they, more or less?
Totally. For me, I certainly could just do a piece of seared flounder on the plancha and serve it with lemon and a sprig of parsley and call it a day. But the reason that I got into the restaurant business initially was, I came from music. And so I love the creative side of it. I love the artistic side of it. I love creating layers and depth, and not that a piece of perfectly seared flounder with lemon and parsley doesn't give you that. But for me, I really think of food and cuisine as a way of expressing myself. And so, I can really express myself through food, and I think it mirrors music in a big way, in that, you're creating something and you're layering something and you're creating depth and creating balance. And so that's why I'm into it. You don't get into the restaurant business because you want to make money. You get into it because you're really drawn to it, and in an artistic way.
That's a real background.
That's ambient noise right there.
Probably have to
Hey, what do you think this is, a restaurant? Calm down. And
That's
that's
the problem with
problem.
restaurants is that most people who do go into restaurants are thinking we're going into this to make money, and then they get into it and they're like, oh wow, this was a bad idea.
Well, tell me what you love most about your job, or I shouldn't call it a job. What you do, your art.
So, what I love most about it is, what I love most about my job is, I love being able to teach the next generation, the generation that's coming up after me, and the generation that's coming up after them, and I think that's both my parents were teachers, and as I've gotten older, I've realized how gratifying that is for me to be able to share what I know and share the lessons that I've learned the hard way, and hopefully give them that shortcut so they don't have to necessarily take as long to figure it out as I did. And
Anything in particular that you want them to learn?
I mean, I want them to learn it all. The great thing about the industry that I'm in is that every day I'm learning something new. Every single day. There's not a single day that I go home and I'm like, yeah, I didn't learn anything today. And I have an extremely inquisitive mind where it's constantly running, and I constantly have to be researching something. If it's not food, like I'm sitting there on the computer, sitting there researching, why, looking at these chairs, like why, tell me about tartans in Scotland. I want to know everything, and that's really great about food. Is there's so much to learn. There's so much you can learn about a single ingredient, about fennel, and where it came from, etc. And so, whatever I can do to pass on whatever knowledge I have to my cooks, it makes me really happy to be able to share that with them.
And now, your dad taught economics at the College of Charleston, is that right?
Correct.
In the 1980s? Mm-hmm. And what kind of teacher was she?
So my mom was actually up at the Strom Thurmond Institute in Clemson, and so she was the director of research for the Strom Thurmond Institute. And then she went on to become city planner for Greenville, as well as the city of Clemson.
And your dad taught at Clemson after he left here?
Yes, and my dad was in planning and urban development.
But while you were growing up in Charleston, you used to go to your grandparents' house in Edisto and do a lot of fishing off their dock, is that right?
Yes, so Aunt and Uncle lived on Edisto Island. My grandparents were in Northbridge Terrace, where my mother grew up, and so from a young age, I would go. I just had this insatiable appetite for fishing, and I really they would let me out in the morning, and I would sit out there and I would fish until they told me I had to come in at nighttime, and I wouldn't leave. I'd sit there all day long. And I was just fascinated with it. And, so I didn't always know that I wanted to open up a seafood restaurant. But I knew that I really loved fishing, and, those were very formative years for me. And, we talked about in the article how that was my first real, I would bring my mother buckets of fish or buckets of crab or buckets of shrimp that I'd caught. And she would take them and she would clean them up, she would prepare them, and she would put them on the table for the entire family. And so the entire family would sit down and they'd have these big smiles and everybody would be super happy and laughing. And we were sitting around eating seafood that I had caught. And for me, that was a very impressionable moment, because I was, 5, 6, 7 years old at this time. And to just see the power that food had, and looking back that seafood had, and how powerful of a tool it was, and how I wanted to be able to share that with people eventually on a larger scale.
Explain why this area is so great for fish because of the confluence of the two fisheries.
Right. So where Charleston is located, we're right smack in the we're right in the middle of the Mid-Atlantic fishery and then the South Atlantic fishery. And there's not many places in the country that get that overlap. Charleston's very unique in that aspect. But the other reason why Charleston's such a great fishery is we have the marsh, and the marsh is full of nutrients, and those nutrients bring young fish and juvenile fish in, and those are the fish that grow up to be big fish. And so we just have this incredible amount of diversity of species here, to the point where even to this day we still get species in that we've never worked with, and that's pretty remarkable. On the Pacific side of things, I can name 10 fish that they're able to get on a consistent basis. Where we are, I'm looking at 40, 50 species, which is wild.
Now, what made you were living in Clemson when you went to high school in Clemson, is that right? And what made you come to the college?
So, I knew a lot of my friends stuck around Clemson, went to Clemson. I felt by the time I had graduated high school that I had already been to Clemson. I had already done all the parties, I'd done all the sports. I grew up going to every football game, every soccer game, every baseball game, every basketball game. And I adored it. It was a great place to grow up. But for me, I was really leaning into the music side of things at that point, leaning into drumming. And honestly, there was a guy down here named Quentin Baxter who was teaching at the college at the time. And I really loved his style. I was doing jazz drumming, and Quentin had this extremely unique style when he was behind a kit. And so I knew that I wanted to come down, I wanted to learn from him. And so I came down nights where I wasn't playing music gigs around town. I would go and work in restaurants. And so I'd work in the kitchen. And at first it was part-time. It was a way to pay my bills and, get me through school. But then I started working for a chef who kept asking me to come back. And eventually he talked me into working for him full-time. So I was doing full-time school, full-time in a restaurant. And then I was playing gigs 3 or 4 nights a week. And so for me, I loved it. I had tons of energy, and it was great. I got to do everything I loved. But what that meant was I would leave the restaurant at 9 o'clock at night, and I would go across town to my gig, and I'd jump up on stage, and I'd start playing, and it was amazing. But the other line cooks in the kitchen were having to clean my station every night, put away all my things. My bandmates were having to set up my drum kit, do sound check, haul my drums, and so it wasn't sustainable for anyone except for me.
And you were working at the Carolina Yacht Club at the time.
That was Carolina Yacht Club days. This was Yacht Club.
Who said?
Because I sat down with the head chef of the Yacht Club, and he's the one who said, tomorrow when you come into work, you're going to tell me whether you're going to be a drummer or a chef. And so stayed up all night long thinking about what I was planning for the rest of my life. And I came back the next day and I said, I'm gonna be a chef. And I never looked back. And I put my horse blinders on at that point. And
haven't touched the drum since, right?
I really haven't. And I was actually, Quentin Baxter was in Chubby Fish last night, so it's perfect timing.
Oh, get out.
But we were talking about it, and we were talking about how similar music and cooking are, and how he dabbles at the house, but that they're both careers where they're really all or nothing careers. If you're going to do it to the best of your ability, you have to be all in, and if you're not, that career will eat you up. And it's the same way with music as it is with cooking.
Let me ask you a little bit about at the college, what you learned there. I know you had a very influential professor named Bob Frash, and what he taught you and how that contributed to your success. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. So when I was when I was switching majors and going over to business and hospitality and tourism, there was a professor there, Dr. Frash, and Dr. Frash had been in the restaurant game. He had opened up numerous restaurants, I think mainly located around upstate New York. And for me, I was into the restaurants because I loved the cooking side of things. I loved the art associated with all that. But what he was really preaching to me was you can do something beyond that. You can own a restaurant, and it can be yours, and it can be your voice. And for me, that was hugely influential because at that time, I was thinking, I'm going to be a chef, and that's the path, and I'll go to culinary school. But I mean, I'm kind of wasting my time at the college a little bit. And for my parents, it was very important that I finish up. But all of a sudden, I started sitting in Dr. Frash's class, and Dr. Frash was talking about how to do food costing and labor costing and franchising a restaurant. And all of a sudden, there was this whole new can of worms that opened, and it was like, you know what? I want to own a restaurant. And so that really set me on that path where it was like, there's something beyond cooking. Like, cooking is important. I have to figure out cooking. But I also need to do all this other stuff along the way. I need to figure out the business side of things if I'm going to open up a restaurant. I need to figure out the marketing side of things, etc. And so he was hugely influential for me. And as I've said before, if he had not stepped into my life, if I had not stepped into his classroom, there would be no Chubby Fish.
Lastly, is this what you envisioned, or how did that idea in his class, when you first thought about the fact that you could own your own restaurant, is this what you envisioned, and are you surprised by your success?
Every now and again, I am surprised, but honestly, I don't ever take time to sit back and kick my feet up and relax and think about what we've created. Yes, I know it's magical. Yes, I know it's powerful. Yes, it's exactly what I wanted. But there's always something to do. And so I never get comfortable. I never sit back and I'm never completely happy with where we're at. Sure, I'm happy. Yes, I love what I do. But there's always something to do. And there's always something that we can improve. And so I'm always constantly searching for what's next, what we can improve, and how to make all of our people happier.
Something new to learn every day, right?
Absolutely.
All right, James, thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Speaking of College of Charleston with today's guest host, Tom Cuniff, and Chef James London. If you liked this episode, please help us reach more listeners by sharing it with a friend or leaving a review. For show notes and more episodes, visit the College of Charleston's official news site, The College Today, at today.charleston.edu. You can find episodes on all major podcast platforms. This episode was produced by Amy Stockwell with recording and sound engineering by Jesse Kunz from the Division of Information Technology.